ladies know I'm not Reverend Alley. We look alike, but you know, don't let us confuse you, okay? A couple of things to talk about just right off the bat. First of all, it's Labor Day weekend, yay!
I'm standing right here.
You're not, it's on too big or too little? Or?
How's it back there?
Can you hear me back there? Okay. Okay, do I talk softer? No, I don't. Okay. A couple of things. First of all, as I said, it's this Labor Day weekend, and we just kind of, many of us think, but it's just a 3-day holiday, and it is. Yay. But it's also a way to think about the word called labor, and I would like to say the word called career or work or whatever it is you do that gives you money, okay? And one of the things we'll talk about a little bit later is that there's value in remembering that, okay? So just that. The other thing is we've already done some of that, but it's been named a National Day of Prayer for the people on the Gulf Coast. So keep that in mind too. It's been an interesting process, hasn't it? Good as well as not so good, but a lot of good. So, once upon a time, don't you love stories that start that way? Once upon a time, there was a little kid whose name was Arjuna. I know it's a strange name, but hang in here with me. And Arjuna always knew that he just loved being a soldier. He would play with his toy guns, and he'd make up battles, and he wore, camouflage clothes whenever he could, and he just loved being a soldier. And he grew up to be a soldier. He had a best friend, and his best friend's name was Krishna. Also a very strange name, but there's a reason for that too. Now, Krishna was not a soldier, but he was a very bright kid. And he had a really strong connection with whatever we call the divine. But they were best friends, and they grew up together. And in fact, Arjuna became a very famous soldier as he grew up. Well, in the community, we're going to not talk about all of that here. For now, let's leave it there, and we'll get back to that story a little bit later, okay? Okay. Okay, even if you don't say yes, that's what we're going to do. This month, Reverend Ellie has designated the month of, she calls it Flames of Faith, which means we get to talk about a lot of the different kinds of ways in which people find all of the different pathways to the divine, to God, whatever we want to call him. So we get to look at, we've already done some of it, Buddhism and Islam and Christianity, and all of its beautiful forms, our own spiritual pathway, but looking very broadly at some of the other ways in which we all get to God. And Farrell talked about all of the ways in which every faith that we can think of, every faith that we know about, and there are thousands of them, have some sort of rule that says we need to be kind to each other. That's a very cool thing to do. But during the month, we're going to talk about a lot of these different kinds of things. So, one of the things I love to talk about is Hinduism. Hinduism was one of the very oldest written down religions, about 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago. 6,000 years ago. The first of the books, the first ever known spiritual written down stuff was done by the Hindus. It's called the Vedas. And then they wrote a series of books called the Upanishad. And they're mostly stories about people. Okay? And they're mostly stories about all kinds of things. One of the stories in the Upanishad is a particular story called the Bhagavad Gita. And that's actually the story of Arjuna and Krishna. Okay? So far, you with me? Now, there are a lot of things about different kinds of religions. Let's start with this. There are things like the Christian religion, which we, most Christians have the idea that there is a person whose name is God. He's not really kind of a person, but he's kind of a super person. Maybe lives on a throne somewhere with a white robe and a long beard. Anybody ever run across this guy? Some of us call him the Santa Claus God because he's up there making a list of good and bad and who's going to give toys to and who gets cold in their socks. But, but the idea behind that is that there is a God that created the earth and gave it to humans and said, okay, go take care of this, I'm busy. Does that make sense? He is not part of the earth. He just created it, and it's up to us to run it. The other version, and it came, well, okay. The other version is that God is in and as all things. In other words, back in the day, in the primitive days, when we lived in trees or caves, wherever we lived, we needed answers to questions. And those questions were things like birth and death, life itself. Why does the Nile rise in the spring, and how can I know when that is so I know when to plant crops? And why is it that the sun comes up every day over here and goes down over there? Does it die? Does something eat it over here? But always in the morning there's another one that shows up. I want an answer to that question. Does that make sense? So when we first started being aware enough to even ask questions, we began to create gods, and those gods became the god of the mountain, and the god of the river, and the god of the sky, and the goddess of the moon, and all of it. We've heard these, and we use them, don't we? But God was the earth itself and the things that were in it. It's interesting that we've taken both parts as we become metaphysicians. We call ourselves pseudo-Christians, some of us do. And yet, what do we believe about God? That it's in all things, right? I say God is in all things, including me. Even the Bible says it's omnipresent, omniscient. What's the other one? But it lives in us, okay? It's an interesting, different way of looking at things. So religions created themselves along two different pathways. One was the pathway of the Western world, what has become the Western world, in the Judeo-Christian and Islamic culture, with God out there and we're in charge of the world. The other, the Eastern religions mostly, have this different perspective, and that is that God is in all things. So as we study Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism and all of these other Eastern philosophies, we recognize that they have their own idea about how the world works, but the world itself is God in expression. Does that make sense? So it's an interesting difference. Because in the Western world, that God out there has created for us a lot of rules to live by. And we get more and more and more rules every year, don't we? Depends on what you believe. On the other hand, the Eastern philosophies tend to concentrate more on who I am and how I live in the world and how do I contribute to the larger version, which is people. Does that make sense? So there's a neat Hindu story. It's in the Upanishad, and it's about a fellow named Indra. Okay? And Indra had a net, like a big fish net, and it covered the entire world. And at each intersection on this net, there was a jewel. And each of those jewels was a person. Okay? Consider that with me. If in the universe there is this enormous net, and we all are jewels on that net, a jewel shines its own self so brightly. And it also reflects the light from everybody else. What a lovely way to think about humanity. If we all are jewels on this net, then we all reflect each other, and in reflecting each other, we reflect our own better selves. That's why I like Hinduism. It's cool. And they have great gods. I gotta tell you, they made up some really groovy gods. We're not going to talk about them so much today. Back to Arjuna and Krishna, who of course now is an aspect of their version of God. Okay, so Krishna is their God. And Arjuna and Krishna are there's this huge battle that's going to take place. And it's a battle in a particular place. I'm not going to pronounce it for you because it's complicated. But of course, there are good guys and there are bad guys. You know? And it's sort of a political war. These guys think they deserve to be in charge of the world, and those guys think that they deserve to be in charge of the world. These are the bad guys, these are the good guys. Guess where Arjuna and Krishna are? On the side of the good guys, okay? But they're all the same guys, and if we're all on Indra's net, then the bad guys are on that net too. Does that make sense? So here we are. We're going to get ready for this battle. And you know, back in those days, they chose a time and a place, and they said it's going to start at dawn or it's going to start at dusk or whatever. But Krishna is kind of thinking about this. And he says and Arjuna is kind of thinking about this, and he says to Krishna, you know, we're in a chariot here. What I'd like to do is, if we drive the chariot out into the middle of the battlefield, I want to look it over. I want to look at the people here and the people there and kind of get an idea about what we're up to. And as they did that, and he looked around, he recognized that over on this side, there were people that he loved, relatives and friends of his, just as there were relatives and friends of his on that side. And he was thinking, you know, these people are going to kill each other, and I'm going to be responsible for that. And I can't do that. I just can't do that. I know I'm a warrior. I know I'm a soldier. I simply cannot do the job that's been given me to do. And he fell to the bottom of the chariot and he cried. Has anybody ever been in a position where you just knew you were supposed to do something and just couldn't do it? Isn't that an interesting thing to be in that place? And what do we do when we do that? For some of us, we just fall to the bottom of the chariot and don't go anywhere. Stephen Cope, who wrote a book that I love, said that people will carry their lawn chairs right to the front, right up to the place where they know they need to work, and they just simply can't go any further, so they set down their lawn chairs, sit down, and that's where they spend the rest of their lives. Never happened to anybody in this room, did it? Yes, it happens to us all the time. So the battle, obviously, is a metaphor for the world that we live in. And what happened with Arjuna is that he just realized that his purpose in life was to be a warrior. He had always known that. And yet, he didn't feel that he could do that work. Now, he felt at that moment he couldn't fulfill his purpose in life. Sometimes we do that. We feel that we just can't, for whatever reason, don't feel confident, you know, whatever kind of story we tell ourselves, get to the point where we just feel like we can't move forward. So the Bhagavad Gita is a book about Krishna talking with Arjuna about how he can get to what he needs to do, all of the ways in which the world can change for him so he can fulfill his purpose in life. Purpose, they call it dharma, okay? That's a word that they use, D-H-A-R-M-A. It's a cool thing. Dharma is a cool thing. And we all know at some level that we have a dharma that we're supposed to be doing. Yes? Yes. Yes, we do. Sometimes we ignore it. Do we? Yes, we do. Yes, we most certainly do. So, within that knowing, in the Gospel of Thomas, you know the Gospel of Thomas is one of the Gnostic Gospels that came recently. There's a phrase that'll scare the socks off of you if you don't listen to it right. It says, if you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. And if you don't bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you. Maybe it's time to get up off that lawn chair and do something. Okay? And what we do is our work. So we come back to the idea of Labor Day. Okay? What is it that you do that is your contribution to society? You were wonderful this morning. It was so cool to come here and watch everybody come and pitch in and put up the stuff and get the things ready and practice the music and all of the things. And I think y'all were having a good time doing it, weren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that cool to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Y'all, by the way, yes, I am from the South. Whoever said that? I was looking this morning at pictures of some of the damage in Houston. And I used to live in Dickinson, Texas. So I didn't see my house, but I know it was 4 feet tall. So There it is. The work that we do, the things that we do as volunteers and as the labor of our world, I hope you're doing what is your dharma. What do you think about the work that you do? Do you love it? Yeah. If you don't, you should. How many people, I know people because I worked at University Hospital for a long time, and I had friends there who had worked at the same job for 20 years and hated it. But they came to work every day because it was secure. Life should be better than that, shouldn't it? And if your life is not better than that, rethink it. Find ways to take the job that you've got and find your purpose in there. But find purpose in your life.
Amen.
Kahil Jagrat says that work is love made visible. If you cannot work with love but only with distaste, it's better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms for those who work with joy. Go sit in your lawn chair. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills poison in the wine. And if you sing, though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. What is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. Are you doing that work? Are you doing that work? Blank. Yes. In some way, everyone here is. I've got the greatest job on earth, I gotta tell you. I get to do exactly what I want to do, only when I want to do it. But you have a great job too, don't you? You contribute in whatever way you do to the world being what the world is right now. Are you finding purpose in what you do?
Yes.
If you're not, find purpose in what you do. Because you're not working for a paycheck. You're working for life. And a paycheck, while not optional, is secondary. For this week, since this week, a little bit of homework. I want you to stay awake in your life this week if you can. Look around you. Look inside your life, look inside your heart. Monday morning when it's time to get up and go to work, Tuesday morning this week, it's time to get up and go to work, ask yourself, am I doing what I want to do? And if the answer is no, then think about that. How do I resolve that within my heart? Doesn't mean you've got to change jobs. And it might. But think about it. Just be aware. Find your dharma, not your drama. Find your dharma. Find your purpose for being. Recognize that. You knew it once when you were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old and you wanted to be a ballet dancer or a doctor or whatever you wanted to be when you grew up. Don't let that go. Remember that part of that is still who you are and what you want to do. So find your dharma, live your dream, and find purpose in every action of your day. Thank you for the privilege of being here with you. Let's pray a little. Right now in this moment, I'm aware of the love in this room, of the caring of all of these people, one for another. For my place on Indra's net, and the way in which my light shines for others, and the way in which their light shines for me. And I am grateful for the life that I live, and the world in which I live, and all of the beauty and joy I find there. I know for myself, as I know for everyone else on this earth, that life is and should be beautiful. and caring and loving. I know for those people on the Gulf Coast that they see hope in a future that's filled with the love of their friends and their family, and the way in which now hope arises new from the floods. I know all pathways lead to this beautiful feeling that we call God, the love that we share, and the love that we are. And I am grateful. I'm so grateful for this place in the time world, in this place in time, and my part in the being and doing of all things. And I give great gratitude for that. And release those words to the law, knowing the work is already done. We are already there, and we stand together in joy. As together we say, and so it is.